just a brief introduction. That actually the main title could deceive you, suggesting that I would speak about the visual aspect. I will actually much more focus on the design of these games, especially that I was asked by the developers, the Polish developers with whom I consulted, that they prefer me to focus on the design part. And last year I was speaking only about art. And it's very hard to speak about both in just 1 hour. And well, as a designer, for me, design is also art. So it's still within the subject. Okay, just in the very beginning. Okay. Okay. Is it louder? Yeah. Yeah, I hear a double voice now. Perfect. Okay, just before I go to the point, just very few words about Artifex Mundi, just to give you some context for this presentation. And also, speaking of context, before I switch to analyzing the design, I'll also try to create the context for the design, because you design games because of something, not just, oh, I have the idea. Yeah, sorry. I'm not looking about this. Sorry. I'm not looking at this screen, so didn't notice it. Okay, and as for the demo, I'll actually focus on the story-driven gameplay design and some very basics of inventory puzzle design, which is the core of the gameplay in the games we create. And also, I will give you some idea of the biggest design challenge in these types of games, just before the final conclusion. We won't have much time to cover this, so maybe we'll leave it for next time. Okay, as for our company, Artifex Mundi, actually we are a casual game developer, and most of the games we develop are casual adventure games. They are called HOPA games, which is an acronym for Hidden Object Puzzle Adventure. But, well, not to make a false impression by giving these words hidden object. Actually, HOPA games are adventure games, not hidden object games. There were some old school hidden object games, like the very first Mystery Case Files, or there are so very many free-to-play hidden object games nowadays on mobile platforms. Actually, HOPA games are much more adventure games. Which is why I will speak about the adventure and the story aspect. However, just before I go to the point, just as I promised, I'll give you some context, because as I was preparing for this presentation, I asked some Polish community whether they prefer me to speak about art or design, and actually one of my friends answered he would like me to speak about how to earn money on these games. So referring to this, I'd like to start with just a few numbers. First, this is somewhat like a number of the casual games we developed longer ago, which did not make a net revenue. This is a number of casual games we developed recently, and they are not going to make net revenue. And as we estimate, looking at our current projects and looking at the history of revenue of the former ones, this is our estimate for the number of games which will not make a net revenue, which are under development now. So basically, every of these games earn money. So I'm not speaking, giving this context to sound cocky, but much more to underline that this is actually a very serious business. So you can really earn money on this. Okay, so if we're speaking about making money on Hoppa games, well, some might say that casual adventure gaming market is shrinking. Actually, it's not that simple, because if you're speaking only about the hermetic Big Fish, internal Big Fish market, Big Fish Games is a casual gaming portal, the biggest one for the PCs. Yes, it is actually flooded. It is also nowadays flooded by free-to-play games, which start to take place of for the premium games, and in the internal market, actually these games earn much less than they used to earn some time ago. But still, they are now much more shifting to mobiles. So you actually can approach a much wider market. I also added this point about the flooding problem, because actually even on some mobiles, there are some mobile platforms that are already flooded with these games. I'm speaking especially about iOS, where Big Fish publishes so many titles. But this does not refer to all markets. So if you're thinking about a really wide market, like any mobile platform that you can think of, then it really starts to earn money. Okay. What's more? Actually, I also heard someone say, just not one person. It's quite popular that the earlier evolution of the genre within the very hermetic, very limited internal Big Fish market sort of destroyed the genre, because it limited it in some very certain ways, not allowing it for further evolution, some wider and broader one. Actually, this is only partially true. Because this evolution limited these games only in some certain areas, and in other areas it perfected them. So the key, if as you can see that this internal market is somewhat shrinking, and you still want to earn money on these games, you have to utilize this perfection in some certain aspects to sort of approach new markets, where these games might behave a bit differently, and you might have a slightly different design focus. Obviously, if you're approaching a wider market, you must think multi-platform. So first of all, you have to think of some unified mechanics which can be easily created within the core technology of your games, so that you don't really need programmers to develop adventure games. They are only sort of clicked in the editor, and all the internal logic of the game is clicked. You don't need programmers. Then all the programmers you have only work on the technology, and with the unified mechanics and sort of layered. Outside of the layer of the certain platform, it actually allows you to quickly and easily port these games into new platforms. And as you approach the wider audience, you can also think of some alterations in your approach towards design. Especially what I already said, these games are more adventure and less hidden object, and this is actually a current trend in the evolution. And not only in the wider market, but also in the internal Big Fish market. Like 2 years ago, it used to be like that in a single game you would have, let's say, 30 hidden object scenes and 15 minigames, and today it's the opposite. So it's much more adventure now. Also, you can think of a broader RAM spectrum, because it is Well, I'll actually come back to this with an example, so maybe I'll not go into details now. Also, because you're approaching a wider audience, not very core casual ones, you have to put some stronger emphasis on the internal logic of these games. I'm not actually saying that it was not important in this limited market earlier on, but the focus was much more on other aspects, which actually worked better on the target audience. So if you take into consideration all these, you can actually think that now this is the point when you can think wider of this genre, like creating and altering it. So it's a great moment for designers. You're not as limited as you were before. And obviously, to make this game successful in the wider market, you also have to include these merits of former evolution, which I spoke of in the previous slide. But as for what are these merits of that former evolution, I will actually cover this in the end of our presentation, because I want to keep it in a bookend form, just as we're going to speak about storytelling. It fits. Okay, so if you actually consider your game as an adventure game, not a hidden object game, you have to have a big picture that your game is actually an interactive story. And in the design process, in the top-down decomposition tree of the design of your game, you have to make the story the root of all your design elements in the game. So obviously you have some very basic idea of the game world, but actually if it comes to the definition of the game world, like the locations you visit, they have to follow certain roles they play in the story. You don't wanna place insert places to the game which actually don't have a really good relation to the story, even if it's really tempting, because like they are very attractive. They pose some great opportunities for good gameplay design. But it's actually quite obvious that you should pay attention to this approach. But the key is that you have to be very disciplined about this. Like, as I said, you will many times you will feel tempted to insert something into a game because it's just fun. But if it does not come from the story, it's not a result of the story. Actually, the real fun of the player who plays the game will be much lower than in case if the bond to the story is clear. That's because the internal motivation of the player will be like I'm doing this because I can. That's not really good. And if it results from the story, then the motivation of the player is I'm doing this because I want. So this is much better. Okay, and when you're designing actual gameplay puzzles, you would also like to utilize the elements which you design in the locations which fit the story. That will make the whole game coherent. Okay, so if you think about the story as the core in the design process of your game, the first thing you have to choose is the them. And actually there is this casual audience paradox, like if you stick to subject that subjects are actually overused, all of the audience will comment it like, been there, done that, I'm not wanna play it, it's just boring. Okay, so you think, okay, I must experiment, I must bring something new. But actually in like 90, maybe 95 or 99% of situations in which you really think up something new, your casual audience will react to this like, oh, no, that's not what we want. Let's not try thinking of something else. Which actually means there is no real good solution to approach this, apart from some very specific situations in which you really have a very great idea for something which is really new and fits what the audience wants. It's very basic, but what I say, but it's very difficult to achieve. However, this is an example. It's actually not our game, but of a studio who are our friends. And the name for this game is Jazz Music and Jazz Club. And this is something new to this genre. And actually, it was a perfect hit. So it perfectly worked. But if you pick something else which you also think is new and maybe might be attractive, like for example science fiction them, or maybe a game about mafia, no, it won't work. You actually won't succeed with this, even though this is something new. Okay, what else? You have to keep your story simple. First of all, simple does not mean bad. And also, because of the casual audience, I'll go into more details later, you have very limited means of telling the player the narrative. So actually, if you think of a more complex story, you probably will fail while translating it into a gameplay. As for this next bullet point, that attractiveness is more important than logic, I'm not trying to suggest that, and it's not my aim, that logic is not important. It's that sometimes the sheer cheesiness in this sort of positive way of understanding it is more valuable than some very, very, very deep details of the in-game logic, which you really have to think like, okay, if I analyze this very deeply, I can identify some very, very certain details which are not coherent. Also, your game has to be catchy from the very beginning, and I mean it with the word "very." Like it's just the start. If you don't catch the player immediately, she will actually leave the game and just try yet another one. And obviously, you have to include some emotional value. This is very important for any story, not just for casual games. But thinking wider, you can actually pass this emotional value to absolutely anything about the game, even a store icon, like this one. It's from our game Nightmares from the Deep. It's quite obvious that Geralt needs our help. Okay, so let's think of some very basic ideas of the themes for casual games. Especially when you think of your next story, you have to focus on one certain element. That refers to this word simple, and it can be like relations between people, like let's say we have lovers, they have a couple, and actually they hurt each other, but undeliberately. So we can make a story of this. Also, we can go a bit deeper, like design a story which is focused on some message, like this one. And if we design a story which the emotional value of which is very, very obvious and basic, like this girl really needs our help, you can also add some additional emotional layers deeper in the background, just to let the player discover them. But you have to be careful with this, because it sort of breaks this rule, what I said before, that your story should actually be simple. So this is quite risky. Okay. However, designing a story is not the main theme of this presentation. Actually, the bigger challenge in when you make casual games is to tell the story through gameplay, than to design a good story. Because possibly you might have many great stories in your mind, but actually 95% of them will not be implementable in a casual game, so you risk failing. First of all, if you want to tell the story through gameplay, it's perfectly specifically about the goals. Like the goals which are story related should be easily translated to the gameplay goals, so that the player understands the puzzle she solves is actually for some reason derived from the story. This is the Mystery Man example, which was posted in a blog post by Thomas Grip. I'd really like anyone to read this because it's a great text. Because actually I found this example in the blog post, and it was exactly the same as we have in one of our games, which was very funny for me. Like, this is an example where you have the story goal like that. You have, well, your gameplay goal is to open the door, but there is someone behind them, and he wants to get out. And actually, you start to feel emotional about that guy. So your gameplay goal, like a puzzle, which is to open the door, is linked to your emotional state towards some story goal. Also, actually, both these blog posts I'm referring to and this example was actually missing one thing. I mean the relations between the story goals. There is some story behind, like there is this guy behind the door, but you have to understand how this story goal, like letting him get out of this cell, refers to the overall goal of your story. So you have to make clear relations and clearly sort of tell them to the players between the story goals, especially that the short-term ones should derive from the long-term ones. You should also keep the player emotional about the story goal. Like in this prisoner example, you're actually hesitative about him. Like, should I trust him or not? That's a great example of the emotion. But let's show a very different one. Like, there's a small kitty that needs help, and I know this is the cheesiest example I could have ever used, but it just works. So that's why I include it here. Okay. Well, if you remember this decomposition tree, like you had the story as the root and gameplay as the leaves of the tree. Actually, now we'll be speaking about these leaves, and what we'll have is the next tree. Because if it comes to the inventory puzzles, you also have to organize them in a tree structure. Like there is a root which is a midterm gameplay goal, and it progresses into smaller goals. So that any time you can understand the relations, the gameplay-wise relations between the actions you can perform. While this is actually quite obvious, this might not. You have to communicate the reason, which is the upper level for the player before the lower level actions can be done. And can you tell me why this is so important? Okay, maybe I'll tell you. Actually, players, when they're exploring the game world and have just one location, one screen, and can move to the further one, they will not do it prior to exploring everything in the certain place they are now. Because if they move forward, they will feel stressed about the possibly having missed something before. So if you don't show the root of the gameplay puzzle in the very beginning, like in this very first location, they will perform all the actions which are available in this place where they currently are, and they will miss these links. So referring to what I said before, that players should perform actions before they want to do this, and not because they can do this. In this case, that would be the latter one. Like they will perform the actions in this first location just before they can do it, not before they want. So this is a very big problem if it comes to the realization of these of the gameplay puzzles. Okay, I think we can give you some very basic example. Okay, it's a bit too loud. Okay, our goal is actually to calm down the horse. That's what our father is trying to do in this game. This is the very beginning of Grim Legends: The Forsaken Bride, because you want to move forward to this small town ahead of us. And we had a small accident, and actually the carriage is being pulled down to a canyon. So we can see it. So the root of the gameplay puzzle is clearly visualized to the player. Like we know what we have to do. So now we can explore the location and see what we have here. Like, okay, there is a luggage hanging on the rope, so possibly it's pulling the carriage down to the ravine. So we have to try to remove it. So maybe the horse will then pull the carriage out of the ravine, and because we can't reach it, it's too far. We can think of using something longer to pull it closer, but we're still missing the item to cut it. We could maybe use the scissors, but we can't take them from below the wheel of the cart. But maybe we can make use of some items we can take from the environment. Like we see two charms here. These are actually story related, and let's take just one small part of one of them. To receive a sharp tool that will actually allow us to cut the weight. Okay, and the danger is, oh, just as our father said. This is actually a very, very, very basic example, just because it's in the very beginning of the game. So it's not the moment in the game when we want to introduce some complex puzzles which pose a greater challenge and take much longer to finish. But actually, obviously, later in these games, there are puzzles which are so much more challenging. Okay, so the overall idea of translating the story to the gameplay was actually the big challenge, but the bigger one is how you realize it. Because actually, most of the things I've already spoken about are quite basic and quite obvious. The problem is that you really have to implement them in the game. And first of all is that you have to clearly communicate your goals and relations between goals and relations between actions you can perform. Specifically, you should focus on the visual communication. In this example, which we just studied, it was actually quite clear. First, the horse was struggling with the carriage. This is a very clear visualization of the problem we have. It's much better than if, for example, we didn't see it, but our father would tell us about this. That would be a very, very wrong way to go. And if it comes to relations, I'm speaking both about the story goal relations as well as the relations between the gameplay goals. Okay. Moreover, there is a problem about the casual audience. Well, I'm not trying to suggest that casual audience is limited. It's about that their approach to gaming actually gives you limits in your design of the game. First, they will skip any dialogues and any cutscenes that take like let's say longer than 10 seconds or maybe 20. That's a very big problem. And usually, if you come up with a good story, you will not be able to translate it to the game without the use of these, which is why you have to keep your stories very simple. Also, there's a problem of 1 minute credit trust credit, like that players. Well, it refers to the flooding problem. If there are very many games of this very same genre, casual players will try your game, and if they are not really caught, like after 1 minute, they will just leave it and try another one. So the initial trust credit of a casual player is actually lower than of a core one. That might be somewhat surprising for some of you, but I think it's quite clear. As for the mechanics, you have to keep them as simple as possible, especially to make them the ideal is to make them invisible for the player, because the player should be focused on understanding the game world interactions, the logic of the interactions in the game world, and not understanding the game system. This is actually very general because it also refers to core games. The problem in casual games is, for example, with the minigame instructions, because if you have minigames, there are lots of them in these games. You have to communicate how to approach them. So you have to give some instructions, but the instructions are actually immersion breakers, and they actually turn the focus of the player from the game world to the game system. And if you erase them and let the player like work out the minigame herself, then we have the problem of this 1 minute trust credit, because the player will just leave the game because it takes too long to understand. You can actually think of applying some custom mechanics. Oh, sorry, maybe later. Oh, okay. Yes, so you can actually approach this like introducing some custom interactive mini puzzles, which are simpler to complete than mini games. They don't have the skip option, but they also don't have any instructions, so you just focus on interacting with the elements in the game. It doesn't give any challenge. Well, casual players want to be challenged, but it greatly increases the player agency in your games. So it results. It's very positive. It has a very positive effect on the game. So, if you're thinking of some custom mechanics, yes, you can add them, you can include them, but you have to be careful about this because it's just like with the demo of the story. It's very easy to make an overkill and just make the player rage quit the game. And that's sort of the problem with dialogue and cutscenes. Apart from making your story simple, you also have to move as much of your narrative value from elements like this into the scene background. And actually, this scene background relates not only to just locations, but also to mini games, etc. Actually, because of the time, I think we will skip this one. Maybe come back to this later, and focus on the story in the scenery. First. As I said in the very beginning, you have to be very disciplined in when you select locations for your game, because every single and each of them should be clearly related to the story. And also in the background art, you have to include as much story-related elements as possible. In this location, in this example which we just played, there was actually like 6 or 7 elements just in the background, which has some reference to the story, like foreshadowing some places we will visit later on, etc., etc. In cases of what we call pop-ups, like that, you can find some let's say poster, etc. in a game and open it to just zoom in on it. You have to limit the text in any of these, because players will not read like more than 2 or like 3 lines of text. So better use pictures. Also, you have to utilize mini games and hidden object scenes to let the player experience the story when they do the core gameplay. And also, you can, or you should, use inventory items which clearly relate to the story, and they bear some emotional value. Let's pick an example of this, a pendant shaped like a butterfly. Quite an interesting item. But if you think, like, first you meet this girl, and you see this butterfly is on her neck, and then she disappears, and then you find this butterfly later on just lying on the ground, then this item, which you will certainly use later on, actually gains some very strong emotional value. In this particular case, actually in this game you also find the hairpin, and you also reassemble the teddy bear, which you will find broken. Okay, let's see how much time we have. I think we also 10 minutes, right? Okay, maybe I think we can try with this one, because it's the fun part. Okay, I stick to Grim Legends. Okay, it's a cover of some box. And this is an example of the minigame. You have the instruction. It is actually very simple, very clear. But the interaction you actually undertake here tells some backstory of the game. And what do we have here? We have to find the correct button sequence to complete the story. I think I remember the correct one, but I'm not. But I might be wrong. Okay, maybe I won't tell you about this particular story, because you'll just see it. Okay, that will be the first one, I think. Second one. Yeah, we succeeded. So you can see it's a very simple story of 2 lovers who meet in a windmill, It refers to the backstory of this game. I won't tell you more, you can play. Obviously, this very cartoon-like visualization is because this was some cover of a box you find. But then you could also tell this through a cutscene, but player would skip it, and no one would remember what was actually displayed in the cutscene. But if you translate it into a mini game where you have some challenge, because obviously I could use some wrong sequence of buttons, and then I would see the actions performed, and the result was not what I wanted. You actually perfectly remember this moment, perfectly realize what happened in this world 25 years ago, in this precise example. Okay. The second problem or the third one actually, about the realization is the numbers. Because as I said before, in anything you design for your games, you have to focus on the story value. But let's say how big a challenge is ahead of you as a designer to design a game which have this number of actions and make any of them story-driven. This is the biggest, I think, the biggest challenge about designing these games, because if you keep thinking only about the story, you'll quickly run out of ideas for good puzzles, and then the gameplay will feel flat. So on one hand, you have to follow this rule, and you have to be very disciplined in your approach towards the story-driven gameplay. But on the other hand, it will pose a great risk of that you will not be able to design really entertaining puzzles. So possibly during the design process, you will actually reject many of your great ideas, either because they don't fit the story, or because even if they fit the story, because they are not attractive enough. So these are exemplary numbers. Like in this game, you have 55 locations to visit, like this screen with the carriage. This is just one location. Okay, and that was the bigger challenge, but there are also the biggest one, which is for the very ending of this presentation. Well, to give a context before I tell you about this biggest design challenge, I'll give you some context. Actually, referring to everything that I said up to this point, numerous Hopa games fail, especially in terms of translating the story to gameplay. They also tend to have very flat stories. I'm not saying most of them do, but many. But there is this layer of the merits of the former evolution of these games in the tight big fish market, and it actually refers to the incredibly polished game flow fluency, and this is the layer on which casual adventure games, at least in my opinion, go much further than the core adventure games. I won't actually give you much details about this. I just list them. But all of this put together induces in your mind the desire to click just once more in these games. So this is sort of one more click syndrome, and it's much popular in these games. It's very hard to get out of the game once you started playing and you got involved and got interested in the game. And what details refer to this? First of all, action intuitiveness. You have to make a game about performing actions that you perfectly understand, not about trying to use any item on any active element in the scene, which was very, very common in the old school point-and-click adventures. It's much more rare in hidden object puzzle adventure games because they are much more perfected in this way. Also, there's a huge theme about the puzzle distribution in the game world, which first of all boils down to them being tightly packed in locations. And second, there's also a second side of this, like it's the player directing the player through the gameplay, so that any time, any moment the player plays, she knows the next gameplay goal, and is also aware of the fact that there are not too many gameplay goals she still has to cover. And apart from this, there are very, very many details, like the great pacing of interaction animations, avoidance of spam fillers, which just make the game longer, but don't really give you any valuable information, or almost no pixel hunting. And then as for this spam filler avoidance, here's an example from a core game where you have so very many elements you can examine, and in very most of them you actually receive only a useless comment by the main character that it looks like a wooden cabinet. I've seen many of these in my life. This doesn't give any information for you apart from what you see in the screen. So this should actually be removed from the game, and the game flow, the pacing would then be much better. Okay, but as I said, this is a very big subject in general, so I think we'll have to leave it for some next time. Especially that I signed the pact with Dave Jones, and he didn't allow me to cover this subject in detail. So I'll move just strictly to the conclusion. First of all, while designing a casual adventure game, obviously, any time, on any level of the design process, you have to mind the specificity of the casual audience. Because that's what I said about the 1 minute initial trust, about skipping, about the themes you can approach, etc., etc. And then, if you keep this in mind, and mix the very general story-driven gameplay design, which refers to any games, any story-driven games, not just casual ones, with the merits of the former genre evolution, which is very casual-oriented, then you can succeed in a wider market, not just the dedicated PC portals, but also mobile games. Okay, so thank you, and let's just for the very end return to this Mystery Man example from our game.
Any questions here? We still have like 5 minutes for questions, so if there are any questions, feel free to ask. If not, we're gonna have like 1 hour lunch break. So business pass holders, there's a lunch on the other side of the street, and for the others there's a grill, there's options of having lunch right here. The questions? Yeah.
You've talked a lot about specific casual market being specific, and if you could just point out in few key points, what would be the main differences between a casual adventure game and core adventure game, or what would you make? What changes would you make to make it core, not casual adventure game?
Well, first change that I would make would be to remove hidden object scenes, because core gamers don't like them. Yeah, but that's actually not the only one, obviously. I think I would also risk a bit more with a demo of the game. I would insert more characters and more interaction with them because I might have more freedom in inserting the dialogue into the game. In case of casual games, it's really very limited. Obviously, there are characters, you meet them, you can talk to them, but in each and every occasion, the dialogue should be very, very short. So if you compare these games, like with the old school point-and-click ones, there was much more dialogue in them. Another example is the complementary dialogue, like the voiced comments by the main character who just constantly keeps commenting what she's doing. An extreme example is Dear Esther, which is actually not really, well, it's a very specific kind of an adventure game. This fits the core market, possibly, but it doesn't fit the casual market. Actually, casual players will feel annoyed about because of this, and we do insert some of these in our games, but it's really very limited, like only to underline some key goals and in certain points of the plot.
Any questions?
Is there any way to stuck in a game? You can lose, or you can stuck because of bug or because of gameplay?
Very good that you reminded this, because this also answers your question, and possibly I should have listed this as the first and very major difference. That no, in case of casual game, you cannot lose. You can get stuck because you can't solve the puzzle, but you can't really make a wrong move.
And do you aware about number? How many players in particular game are stuck because they can't solve a puzzle because of they can't solve it?
Yeah, we do some research, like to estimate the time people spend on specific puzzles, just to remove situations in which the level of difficulty peaks too high. This is one of these factors which the former evolution of the market made these games more perfected. Like the level of difficulty is really very polished. So there's quite a low risk that you would get stuck for longer than, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.